Caitlin Clark was not just another name in the world of basketball. She was a phenomenon, a player who had captured the hearts of millions with her incredible talent and unrelenting drive. From the moment she stepped onto the court as a young college athlete, it was clear that Caitlin was destined for greatness. Her journey to becoming one of the most celebrated figures in sports was anything but ordinary. It was a story filled with hard work, determination, and moments that tested her resolve. Growing up in a small town, Caitlin's love for basketball began at an early age. Her father, a former high school coach, introduced her to the game when she was just a child. Every evening they would head to the local park where Caitlin practiced shooting hoops until the sun went down. At first it was just a hobby, a way to bond with her dad, but soon it became something much more. Caitlin realized that basketball wasn't just about scoring points. It was about pushing herself to be better every single day. By the time she reached high school, Caitlin had already developed a reputation as a standout player. Her ability to sink three-pointers from seemingly impossible distances earned her the nickname, the Sniper. But what truly set her apart was her basketball IQ. Caitlin didn't just rely on physical skills. She understood the game inside and out. She could read opponents' moves, anticipate plays, and make split-second decisions that left spectators in awe. Coaches and scouts took notice, and before long, Caitlin found herself at the center of attention. College was where Caitlin truly blossomed. Playing for her university team, she quickly became the star player, leading her squad to multiple victories and earning numerous accolades along the way. Her performances were nothing short of spectacular. In one game, she scored over 40 points, breaking records and silencing critics who doubted her abilities. Fans packed the arenas to watch her play, and media outlets couldn't get enough of her story. Caitlin's rise to fame was meteoric, but she never let it go to her head. Despite all the attention, Caitlin remained grounded. She credited her success to her family, her teammates, and the countless hours she spent honing her craft. Off the court, she was known for her humility and kindness. On the court, however, she was a force to be reckoned with. Caitlin played with a fire that inspired those around her. Whether it was diving for loose balls or hitting buzzer-beating shots, she gave everything she had in every game. As her popularity grew, so did the pressure. Critics began to scrutinize her every move, questioning whether she was truly as good as people claimed. Some said her success was due to favorable matchups, while others argued that her style of play wouldn't translate to the professional level. But Caitlin didn't let the negativity affect her. Instead, she used it as fuel to prove her doubters wrong. Each criticism only made her stronger, more determined to show the world what she was capable of. Her breakout moment came during a championship game that will forever be etched in basketball history. With seconds left on the clock and her team trailing by 2 points, Caitlin dribbled past defenders, created space, and launched a shot from beyond the arc. Swish. The crowd erupted as the ball sailed through the hoop, securing the victory for her team. That shot wasn't just a game winner, it was a statement. It announced to the world that Caitlin Clark was here to stay. After graduating, Caitlin entered the professional league, where expectations were sky high. Analysts debated whether she could replicate her college success against tougher competition. But Caitlin silenced the skeptics almost immediately. In her rookie season, she shattered records, won awards, and established herself as one of the brightest stars in the league. Her games were must-see events, drawing fans from all walks of life. Young girls looked up to her as a role model, aspiring to follow in her footsteps. However, fame came with its own challenges. As Caitlin's profile grew, so did the scrutiny. Every interview, every social media post, and every interaction was analyzed under a microscope. Some journalists tried to paint her as arrogant or overhyped, while others questioned whether her achievements were sustainable. But Caitlin handled it all with grace and maturity. She knew that being in the spotlight meant facing both praise and criticism, and she refused to let anyone dictate how she felt about herself. Little did Caitlin know that one particular interview would change everything. It was supposed to be a routine post-game chat, a chance to reflect on another stellar performance. But what unfolded during that conversation would become one of the most memorable moments of her career, and one that no one saw coming. Caitlin's journey to this point had been remarkable, but it was far from over. What happened next would test her patience, intelligence, and ability to stand up for herself in front of millions of viewers. And when the dust settled, the world would see exactly why Caitlin Clark was more than just a basketball player. She was a leader, a trailblazer, and someone who refused to back down when challenged. The arena was buzzing with excitement as Caitlin Clark walked off the court, sweat glistening on her forehead, and a triumphant smile lighting up her face. Her team had just pulled off an incredible victory against one of their toughest rivals, thanks in large part to Caitlin's extraordinary performance. She had scored 30 points, dished out 10 assists, and even grabbed 8 rebounds, a near triple-double that left fans chanting her name long after the final buzzer sounded. The energy in the stadium was electric, and everyone wanted to hear from the star player who had single-handedly turned the tide of the game. Back in the media room, reporters jostled for position, eager to get a word with Caitlin. ESPN analyst Elle Duncan sat at the front of the pack, microphone in hand, ready to conduct the post-game interview. Known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense approach, Elle was respected in the industry but also had a reputation for asking tough questions. Some athletes found her intimidating while others appreciated her directness. Tonight, however, nobody expected what was about to unfold. Caitlin took her seat across from Elle, still catching her breath after the intense match. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her jersey clung to her body from the exertion of the game. Despite her exhaustion, she radiated confidence, leaning forward slightly as if ready to take on whatever came her way. Elle began the interview with a warm smile, congratulating Caitlin on the win and asking how it felt to lead her team to such a dominant performance. "It feels amazing," Caitlin replied, her voice steady and full of pride. "We worked so hard for this. Every practice, every film session, it all paid off tonight." Her words were genuine, reflecting the hours of dedication she poured into her craft. Elle nodded approvingly, then transitioned to more technical questions about strategy and teamwork. Caitlin answered each one thoughtfully, breaking down key plays and crediting her teammates for their contributions. So far, everything seemed normal. But halfway through the interview, Elle suddenly changed gears. With a sly grin, she leaned closer to the microphone and asked, "Caitlin, some people say your success is more due to hype than actual skill. What do you think about that?" The room fell silent. It was as if time itself had paused. Reporters exchanged glances, unsure whether they had heard correctly. Fans watching at home gasped audibly, replaying Elle's words in their minds. The question was unexpected, not just because of its content but because of its timing. Post-game interviews were typically celebratory affairs, meant to highlight achievements rather than provoke controversy. Yet here was Elle Duncan, throwing a verbal curveball that could have easily rattled even the most seasoned athlete. For a brief moment, Caitlin blinked, processing the weight of the question. Her expression didn't change. She remained calm and composed, though anyone paying close attention might have noticed a slight tightening of her jaw. Inside, her mind raced. Was this a test? An attempt to rattle her composure? Or simply a poorly timed inquiry? Whatever the intention, Caitlin knew she couldn't afford to let it shake her. Millions of people were watching, not just fans but critics, peers, and future opponents. How she responded would define this moment. Elle's question hung in the air, heavy with implications. To call Caitlin's success hype was to dismiss years of relentless effort, late-night practices, and sacrifices made along the way. It undermined not only her personal journey, but also the countless hours her teammates and coaches had invested in building a championship-caliber squad. For many, the question felt unfair, almost dismissive of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into every victory. And yet Caitlin understood that being in the spotlight meant facing moments like these head-on. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. Her eyes locked onto Elle's, unwavering and piercing. "Elle," she said, her tone measured but firm. "You've been around this sport long enough to know better than to ask something like that." Her words carried authority, commanding attention from everyone in the room and beyond. Viewers leaned closer to their screens, hanging on every syllable. Caitlin continued, her voice rising slightly as she spoke with conviction. My stats speak for themselves. I don't need hype to validate my work because my game does that every time I step onto the court. People can say what they want, but the truth is right there in black and white. You can see it in the numbers, in the wins, and in the way we play together as a team. Her response was powerful, cutting straight to the heart of the matter without resorting to anger or defensiveness. Caitlin wasn't just defending herself, she was making a statement. She reminded everyone listening that success wasn't handed to her on a silver platter. It was earned through sheer determination and grit. Her confidence was palpable, and it resonated deeply with those watching. In the audience, reactions varied. Some cheered loudly, applauding Caitlin for standing her ground. Others whispered among themselves, debating whether Elle's question was justified or unnecessarily provocative. Social media exploded with activity as fans rushed to share their thoughts. Hashtags like Respect Caitlin and Hyperskill trended within minutes, sparking heated discussions across platforms. Many praised Caitlin for handling the situation with grace, while others criticized Elle for attempting to undermine her accomplishments. Even Elle seemed taken aback by Caitlin's poise. The seasoned analyst shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly unprepared for such a composed rebuttal. For a moment she hesitated, searching for a follow-up question that wouldn't further escalate the tension. Meanwhile, Caitlin sat calmly, her posture relaxed but commanding. She had seized control of the narrative, turning what could have been a hostile exchange into an opportunity to reinforce her legacy. As the interview progressed, Elle attempted to pivot back to safer topics, asking about Caitlin's plans for future games and her thoughts on upcoming matchups. But the damage, or perhaps the breakthrough, had already been done. Caitlin's response to the controversial question lingered in the air, casting a shadow over the rest of the conversation. No matter how Elle tried to steer things, the focus remained firmly on Caitlin's remarkable comeback. By the time the interview ended, Caitlin had solidified her status as not just a talented athlete, but also a role model for aspiring players everywhere. Her ability to remain cool under pressure and articulate her perspective with clarity demonstrated maturity far beyond her years. Young fans tuning in saw firsthand how to handle adversity with dignity and strength. Older viewers admired her professionalism, recognizing that Caitlin had handled the situation with class. Outside the media room, the buzz continued to grow. Reporters scrambled to file stories about the incident, analyzing every word exchanged between Caitlin and Elle. Analysts debated whether the question was fair or overly critical, while commentators highlighted Caitlin's impressive response. Regardless of individual opinions, one thing was clear. Caitlin Clark had once again proven that she was more than capable of holding her own in any arena, literal or figurative. What started as a routine post-game interview had transformed into a defining moment in Caitlin's career. The question that stunned everyone had inadvertently given her a platform to showcase her resilience, intelligence, and unwavering belief in herself. As the night wore on, Caitlin returned to her locker room, where teammates greeted her with high fives and hugs. They knew they had witnessed something special, a moment that would be talked about for weeks, months, and perhaps even years to come. The tension in the media room was palpable. Every eye was glued to Caitlin Clark, waiting to see how she would respond next. Elle Duncan's provocative question still hung heavy in the air, but Caitlin had already taken control of the narrative, with her initial rebuttal. Now it was time for her to deliver the knockout blow, a response that would leave no room for doubt about who she was and what she stood for. Elle, clearly unsettled by Caitlin's earlier composure, tried to regain the upper hand. Leaning forward slightly, she pressed on, her tone laced with a mix of skepticism and thinly veiled challenge. "I'm just saying," Ella said, her voice firmer this time. "There are skeptics out there who feel your achievements might not hold up under scrutiny compared to other legends of the game. How do you address those concerns?" It was another loaded question, one designed to provoke or perhaps even embarrass Caitlin. But instead of shrinking under the pressure, Caitlin leaned into it. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, as if she had been expecting this line of questioning all along. She took a moment to gather her thoughts before answering. Her eyes locked onto Elle's like a hawk sizing up its prey. "You know what, Elle?" Caitlin began, her voice steady and deliberate. "If those so-called skeptics spent half as much time watching film and studying the game as they do making baseless claims, maybe they'd understand why I'm here today." The words landed like a punch, sharp and unrelenting. Caitlin wasn't yelling or raising her voice. Her tone was measured, almost conversational, yet every syllable carried weight, cutting through the noise and silencing any lingering doubts about her confidence. She didn't stop there. Caitlin shifted gears, using the opportunity to break down exactly how she had contributed to her team's victory that night. With clarity and precision, she walked Ella and the entire audience through specific plays from the game. "Let's talk about the third quarter," Caitlin said, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. "We were down by 8 points when I called for a pick and roll at the top of the key. My defender bit on the fake and I drove baseline, drawing 2 defenders. That left our power forward wide open under the basket, and I hit her with a perfect bounce pass for an easy layup." Her explanation was clinical, almost professorial. Caitlin wasn't just recounting events. She was teaching a lesson, showing everyone how basketball strategy worked in real time. She went on to describe another pivotal moment, a clutch three-pointer she sank during the final minutes of the game. "When I pulled up from beyond the arc, it wasn't luck or hype," Caitlin explained. "I read the defense collapsing toward the paint and I knew I had a clean look. It's not magic. It's preparation and execution." As Caitlin spoke, Ella's demeanor began to shift. At first, she had been leaning forward aggressively, ready to push back against whatever Caitlin said, but now she sat back in her chair, listening intently. There was a flicker of admiration in her eyes, though she tried to mask it behind a neutral expression. Even the reporters in the room couldn't help but nod approvingly. Caitlin wasn't just defending herself. She was proving her point with facts, logic, and undeniable expertise. The audience, both in the arena and watching from home, erupted in applause. Social media lit up with praise for Caitlin's poise and intelligence. Fans flooded platforms like Twitter and Instagram with GIFs of her responses, captioned with hashtags like "Girl Caitlin owns," "The narrative," and "A basketball genius." Commentators marveled at how effortlessly she dismantled Elle's questions, turning what could have been a hostile exchange into a masterclass in self-assurance and knowledge. But Caitlin wasn't done yet. Sensing that she had the momentum on her side, she decided to drive her point home with one final remark. "At the end of the day," she said, her voice softening ever so slightly, "basketball isn't about tearing each other down. It's about lifting each other up. If people want to criticize me, fine, I can handle it. But let's focus on celebrating hard work and excellence instead of spreading negativity. This game is bigger than any one player or analyst." Her closing statement struck a chord with everyone listening. It wasn't just about winning arguments or proving critics wrong. It was about elevating the sport and inspiring others to chase their dreams. Caitlin's words resonated deeply, especially among young fans who looked up to her as a role model. Parents tweeted about how proud they were to have their daughters watch Caitlin's interview, calling it a lesson in resilience and grace under pressure. Even Elle couldn't deny the impact of Caitlin's response. After a brief pause, she nodded, slowly, acknowledging the validity of Caitlin's points. "You make a good case," Elle admitted, her tone softer now. "And your performance tonight certainly speaks volumes." It was a rare moment of humility from someone known for her tough interviewing style, and it only served to highlight Caitlin's ability to win people over, even her detractors. As the interview wrapped up, Caitlin offered a polite smile and thanked Elle for the opportunity to speak. She exited the media room to thunderous applause, her teammates waiting outside to congratulate her. They knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a display of mental toughness and eloquence that few athletes possessed. Caitlin hadn't just answered questions. She had rewritten the script, turning a potentially damaging situation into a defining chapter of her career. Back in the broadcast booth, analysts struggled to contain their excitement. One commentator remarked. That might be the best post-game interview I've ever seen. Caitlin didn't just defend herself, she educated us all. Another added, she's not just a great player, she's a leader. You can see why so many people look up to her. For Caitlin, however, the moment wasn't about personal glory. As she made her way back to the locker room, she reflected on the bigger picture. She understood that being a public figure meant facing challenges head-on, whether on the court or off it. And while she appreciated the support pouring in from fans and colleagues, she remained focused on her ultimate goal, continuing to grow as a player and a person. The incident quickly became a topic of conversation across the sports world. Pundits debated whether Ella's questions were justified or unnecessarily confrontational, but most agreed that Caitlin's response was nothing short of brilliant. Some even suggested that the exchange would go down as one of the most memorable moments in sports journalism history, a testament to Caitlin's ability to rise above adversity and inspire others. By the time Caitlin returned home that evening, her phone was buzzing nonstop with messages from friends, family, and fans. Each message carried the same sentiment, pride and admiration. But despite the whirlwind of attention, Caitlin stayed grounded. She knew that success wasn't defined by viral moments or trending hashtags. It was about consistency, effort, and staying true to oneself. As she climbed into bed that night, exhausted but satisfied, Caitlin allowed herself a small smile. She had faced a challenge head-on and emerged stronger because of it. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she was ready for whatever came next. After all, Caitlin Clark wasn't just a basketball player. She was a force of nature, capable of overcoming any obstacle thrown her way. The media room was still buzzing with energy as Caitlin Clark stood up from her chair, ready to leave after the intense exchange with Elle Duncan. But before she could step away, Elle interjected once more, determined not to let the conversation end on Caitlin's terms. "Hold on a second," Elle said, her tone firmer now, almost challenging. "You've made your point about preparation and execution, but what about consistency? Some critics argue that you're great in flashes, but they question whether you can sustain this level of play over an entire season." Caitlin froze mid-step, turning back to face Ellie. Her expression softened slightly, but there was steel in her eyes, a quiet determination that told everyone she wasn't done yet. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. "Consistency," Caitlin repeated slowly, letting the word hang in the air for a moment. "That's something I hear a lot. People want to see if I can keep showing up night after night, game after game. Well, let me tell you something. Consistency isn't just about talent, it's about discipline, resilience, and having the mindset to push through when things get tough." Her voice carried conviction, each word landing with precision. Caitlin didn't raise her voice or show frustration. Instead, she spoke with calm authority, as though she were addressing not just Ella, but also the skeptics watching at home. "I don't wake up every morning thinking about proving people wrong," she continued. "I wake up thinking about how I can be better than I was yesterday. That means putting in extra hours at practice, studying film until my eyes hurt, and making sacrifices that most people wouldn't even consider. Consistency isn't luck, it's work. And anyone who doubts that hasn't been paying attention." Elle leaned back in her chair, visibly taken aback by Caitlin's unwavering confidence. For someone known for throwing curveballs during interviews, Ella suddenly seemed unsure of her next move. Caitlin had turned the tables completely, shifting the focus from criticism to celebration of hard work and dedication. Every answer she gave was calculated, thoughtful, and impossible to dismiss. But Elle wasn't ready to concede just yet. Sensing that Caitlin was gaining the upper hand, she tried one last attempt to challenge her. "Fair enough," Elle admitted, grudgingly. "But let's talk about leadership. Critics often say you rely too much on individual brilliance rather than elevating your teammates. How do you respond to that?" It was a clever pivot, designed to shift the narrative away from Caitlin's personal achievements and onto her role within the team dynamic. But Caitlin saw right through it. A small smile played on her lips as she replied, "Leadership doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means creating opportunities for others to shine. Tonight, I had 10 assists because I trusted my teammates to make plays when I drew defenders. Leadership is about knowing when to take charge and when to step back, and I've worked hard to strike that balance. She paused, leaning forward slightly to emphasize her point. Look at our power forward tonight. She scored 20 points, not because I handed her the ball once or twice, but because I created space for her to operate. That's leadership. It's not about hogging the spotlight. It's about building trust and making sure everyone feels valued. Anyone who says otherwise clearly doesn't understand the game, or me. The room erupted into applause again, journalists nodding approvingly, as they scribbled notes furiously. Fans watching at home cheered, flooding social media with praise for Caitlin's articulate responses. Hashtags like "True Leader" and "Team First" trended worldwide, highlighting the widespread admiration for her poise and perspective. Even Elle couldn't hide her growing respect, offering a subtle nod as Caitlin wrapped up her explanation. With the momentum squarely in her favor, Caitlin decided to drive her final point home. "Ella," she said, her tone softening but still. "First, I appreciate your questions because they push me to reflect on my journey. But let's not lose sight of why we're here, to celebrate basketball. This sport has given me so much, and I want to use my platform to inspire others, especially young girls who dream of playing at this level. If sharing my story helps even one person believe in themselves, then all of this, the criticism, the pressure, the late nights, is worth it." Her words resonated deeply, not just with the audience but also with Elle. For the first time since the interview began, Elle looked genuinely moved. "You're absolutely right," she said, her voice softer now, almost apologetic. "And I think what you've shown tonight goes beyond stats or strategy. You've demonstrated what it means to lead with grace and humility." It was a rare admission from someone known for their tough interviewing style, and it signaled a turning point in the conversation. As the interview concluded, Caitlin thanked Elle and the assembled reporters, flashing her trademark smile before heading toward the locker room. The atmosphere around her was electric, filled with admiration and respect. Teammates greeted her with cheers and hugs, congratulating her not only for her performance on the court but also for how she handled herself under pressure. One teammate joked, "You just won another game," in the media room. Everyone laughed, but the sentiment was clear. Caitlin had triumphed both physically and mentally. Back in the broadcast booth, commentators struggled to contain their enthusiasm. "I've never seen anything like that," one analyst exclaimed. "Caitlin didn't just answer questions. She rewrote the playbook for handling adversity in sports." Another chimed in, "This is going to be studied in journalism classes someday." Elle threw everything she had at Caitlin, and Caitlin came out stronger every time. Social media exploded with reactions, fans praising Caitlin's ability to stay composed while dismantling Elle's arguments. Memes circulated showing Caitlin calmly deflecting Elle's questions, captioned with phrases like "mic drop moment" and "how to handle criticism like a pro." Young fans posted videos of themselves mimicking Caitlin's confident delivery, inspired by her example. Parents shared heartfelt messages thanking Caitlin for being such a positive role model for their children. Meanwhile, Caitlin remained focused on the bigger picture. As she sat in the locker room, surrounded by her teammates, she reflected on the evening's events. While she appreciated the outpouring of support, she knew that moments like these were fleeting. What mattered most was staying grounded and continuing to improve. She reminded herself that success wasn't defined by viral moments or trending hashtags. It was about consistency, effort, and staying true to her values. Later that night, as Caitlin scrolled through her phone, she noticed countless messages from fans expressing gratitude for her words. Many wrote about how her responses inspired them to pursue their dreams despite facing criticism or doubt. One message stood out in particular. "Hi, Caitlin. I'm a 12-year-old girl who loves basketball, but sometimes people tell me I'm not good enough. Watching you tonight made me realize I can achieve anything if I work hard and believe in myself. Thank you." Reading that message brought tears to Caitlin's eyes. In that moment, she understood the true impact of what had happened. It wasn't about winning arguments or silencing critics. It was about using her platform to uplift others and remind them that they weren't alone in their struggles. Caitlin replied to the girl, encouraging her to keep chasing her dreams and assuring her that she believed in her potential. As the night wore on, Caitlin allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the challenges she'd faced throughout her career, the doubters, the naysayers, the moments when she questioned herself. Each obstacle had shaped her into the person she was today, resilient, determined, and unafraid to stand up for herself. Tonight's encounter with Elle Duncan was just another chapter in that journey, a reminder that no matter how far she came, there would always be new battles to fight. But Caitlin welcomed those battles. They fueled her passion, pushed her to grow, and gave her opportunities to inspire others. As she climbed into bed, exhausted but fulfilled, she smiled to herself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new games, and new chances to prove herself. And Caitlin Clark was ready for all of it. The echoes of Caitlin Clark's powerful responses to Elle Duncan lingered long after the interview ended. As she walked out of the media room, Caitlin felt a mix of emotions, pride in how she handled herself, gratitude for the support pouring in from fans and teammates, but also a deep sense of responsibility. She knew that moments like these carried weight beyond the immediate spotlight. They weren't just about proving critics wrong, they were opportunities to inspire others and shape the narrative around her journey. Back in the locker room, Caitlin found solace among her teammates. The energy was electric, with everyone buzzing about what had just unfolded. Her coach pulled her aside briefly, offering words of encouragement. "You didn't just win tonight's game," he said with a proud smile. "You showed the world who you are, a leader, a fighter, and someone who represents this sport with dignity." Caitlin nodded humbly, thanking him for his kind words. But inside, she understood the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about legacy. As the adrenaline began to fade, Caitlin took a seat in front of her locker, tying up her sneakers and preparing to head home. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications flooding in faster than she could read them. Messages from friends, family, and fans filled her screen, each one expressing admiration for how she handled the post-game interview. Scrolling through the comments, Caitlin couldn't help but feel overwhelmed, not by the sheer volume of attention, but by the impact her words seemed to have on others. One message stood out among the rest. It was from a young girl named Mia, who wrote, "I want to be like you when I grow up. I've been told I'm too small to play basketball, but watching you tonight made me believe I can do anything if I work hard enough." Caitlin paused, rereading the message several times. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the ripple effect of her actions. For Mia, and countless others like her, Caitlin wasn't just an athlete. She was proof that resilience and self-belief could overcome any obstacle. Determined to respond personally, Caitlin typed out a heartfelt reply. "Hi Mia," she began. "Thank you so much for your message. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Never let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. You belong on that court just as much as anyone else. Keep working hard, stay true to yourself, and remember that size doesn't define greatness. Your heart does. I believe in you, and I can't wait to see all the amazing things you'll accomplish." Hitting send, Caitlin leaned back against the locker room wall, letting the weight of the evening settle over her. She thought about the countless hours she had spent honing her craft, the early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices that went unnoticed by most people. None of it had been easy, but every challenge had taught her something valuable. Tonight, she realized, was no different. Facing Elle Duncan's tough questions had pushed her to articulate her beliefs and values in a way that resonated far beyond the confines of a basketball arena. Later that night, as Caitlin drove home, she reflected on the bigger picture. The exchange with Ella wasn't just about defending herself. It was about setting an example. In today's world, where negativity often overshadowed positivity, Caitlin wanted to remind people of the power of grace under pressure. She believed that sports weren't just about winning or losing. They were about bringing people together, teaching life lessons, and inspiring future generations. Her thoughts drifted to her own childhood, remembering the days when she played basketball in her backyard with her dad. Back then, she never imagined she'd be sitting here now, celebrated as one of the brightest stars in the league. What kept her going during those early years wasn't fame or recognition. It was love for the game and the joy it brought her. Caitlin smiled softly at the memory, realizing how important it was to hold on to that passion amidst the chaos of professional sports. When she arrived home, Caitlin sat down at her kitchen table, still processing everything that had happened. She decided to write in her journal, a habit she had maintained since college. Writing helped her organize her thoughts and find clarity in moments of uncertainty. Flipping open the notebook, she picked up her pen and began. Tonight was a turning point, not because of the questions I faced, but because of how I chose to respond. Some might see it as a battle between me and Ella, but I see it differently. It was a chance to show people that criticism doesn't have to break you, it can make you stronger. Every word I spoke wasn't just for myself. It was for anyone who's ever doubted their abilities or felt like giving up. I thought about my younger self tonight, the girl who dreamed of playing basketball professionally, but worried she wasn't good enough. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her to keep believing. Hard work pays off even when it feels like no one is watching, and kindness matters more than we realize. When we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down, we create a better world, not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. Elle's questions reminded me of something important. Being in the spotlight comes with challenges, but it also comes with opportunities. We get to decide how we use those opportunities. Tonight I chose to focus on celebrating hard work, teamwork, and the beauty of this game. I hope that's what people remember, not the tension or the controversy, but the message behind it all. Closing. Her journal. Caitlin felt a renewed sense of purpose. The evening's events had reaffirmed her commitment to using her platform wisely. She knew that fame came with responsibility, and she intended to honor that responsibility by staying grounded, continuing to grow as a player, and inspiring others to chase their dreams. The next morning, Caitlin woke up to find her story dominating headlines across sports networks and social media platforms. Analysts praised her poise and intelligence, calling her response to Elle Duncan one of the most memorable moments in recent sports history. Fans shared videos of her answers, dissecting every word and praising her ability to remain composed under pressure. Even Elle herself posted a tweet acknowledging Caitlin's performance, writing, "Last night was a masterclass in handling adversity. Caitlin Clark is truly a remarkable athlete and person." For Caitlin, however, the accolades weren't the highlight of the day. Instead, it was the flood of messages from young fans who saw themselves in her story. Parents thanked her for being a role model. Teachers shared stories of students inspired to try harder in school, and coaches reported seeing renewed enthusiasm among their players. Caitlin took the time to respond to as many messages as possible, knowing that her words could make a difference in someone's life. By the end of the week, the dust had settled, and the sports world moved on to new games and new stories. But for Caitlin, the encounter with Elle Duncan remained etched in her memory, not as a confrontation to be forgotten, but as a defining chapter in her journey. It reinforced her belief that success wasn't measured solely by wins or stats. It was about making an impact, both on and off the court. As she prepared for her next game, Caitlin carried the lessons of that night with her. She knew there would always be critics and skeptics, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them head-on. More importantly, she understood that her greatest victories weren't scored on the scoreboard. They were earned in the hearts and minds of those she inspired. And so, Caitlin stepped onto the court once again, ready to give her all for her team and her fans. With every dribble, pass, and shot, she reminded everyone why she was more than just a basketball player. She was a beacon of hope, determination, and unwavering belief in the power of perseverance. In the days following her unforgettable showdown with Elle Duncan, Caitlin Clark's life became a whirlwind of attention and admiration. The interview had gone viral, not just in the sports world but across mainstream media as well. Clips of her responses were played repeatedly on television, dissected by analysts, and shared millions of times on social media. Her words, calm, confident, and inspiring, had struck a chord with people from all walks of life. What started as a routine post-game chat had transformed into a defining moment in Caitlin's career, one that would leave an indelible mark on her legacy. For many, Caitlin's handling of the situation was nothing short of extraordinary. Analysts marveled at how she turned what could have been a hostile exchange into a lesson in resilience and leadership. "This is why Caitlin Clark is more than just a basketball player," one commentator said during a morning show segment. "She didn't shy away from tough questions. She embraced them and used them to uplift others. That takes courage and wisdom." Another analyst added, "Her ability to stay composed while dismantling criticism is something we'll be talking about for years to come." The praise wasn't limited to sports experts. Teachers, parents, and mentors around the country began using Caitlin's responses as examples of how to handle adversity with grace and intelligence. In classrooms, educators played clips of the interview to teach students about public speaking, critical thinking, and emotional regulation. Parents told their children stories about Caitlin's determination, encouraging them to adopt her mindset when facing challenges. Even business leaders cited her poise under pressure as a model for navigating difficult conversations in professional settings. But perhaps the most profound impact was felt by young athletes, especially girls who dreamed of playing basketball at the highest level. For them, Caitlin wasn't just an inspiration. She was proof that they could achieve greatness despite obstacles. Social media platforms were flooded with videos of young players practicing drills or mimicking Caitlin's moves, accompanied by captions like, "Working hard like Caitlin" or "Dreaming big because of Caitlin." Many wrote heartfelt messages thanking her for showing them that size, gender, or background didn't matter. It was passion and perseverance that counted. Caitlin herself was deeply moved by the outpouring of support. As she scrolled through her phone late one night, tears welled up in her eyes as she read message after message from fans sharing their personal struggles and triumphs. One teenage boy wrote, "I've always been told I'm too slow to play basketball, but watching you stand up to Elle made me realize speed isn't everything. It's heart and hustle that win games." Another fan, a college student balancing academics and athletics, expressed gratitude for Caitlin's reminder that consistency came from discipline rather than natural talent. Each message reinforced Caitlin's belief that her platform was a gift, one she intended to use wisely. Despite the overwhelming attention, Caitlin remained focused on her primary goal, excelling on the court. She returned to practice with renewed determination, knowing that actions spoke louder than words. Her teammates noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor, not arrogance but quiet confidence. During drills, Caitlin pushed herself harder than ever, setting an example for everyone around her. Off the court, she continued to engage with fans, responding to messages and participating in community events aimed at empowering young athletes. Her humility and dedication only deepened the respect people had for her. One such event took place at a local youth center, where Caitlin spent an afternoon mentoring aspiring players. Dozens of kids gathered to meet her, wide-eyed and eager to learn. Caitlin spent hours teaching them fundamentals, offering tips on shooting, passing, and defensive positioning. But more importantly, she shared stories about her own journey. The setbacks, the sacrifices, and the moments of doubt that had shaped her into the person she was today. "Success doesn't happen overnight," she told the group. "It's built brick by brick through hard work and believing in yourself even when it feels impossible." The children listened intently, hanging on to every word. When the session ended, many lined up to hug her, their faces glowing with admiration. One little girl handed Caitlin a handmade card that read, "Thank you for showing me I can do anything." Caitlin hugged her tightly, promising to keep fighting for dreams like hers. Moments like these reminded Caitlin why she played the game, not for fame or accolades, but to make a difference. As weeks turned into months, Caitlin's influence continued to grow. Her jersey sales skyrocketed, making her one of the most popular athletes in the league. Endorsement deals poured in, but Caitlin carefully selected partnerships aligned with her values. focusing on brands that supported women's sports and youth empowerment initiatives. She also launched a scholarship program for underprivileged girls interested in pursuing athletics, ensuring that financial barriers wouldn't prevent talented individuals from chasing their dreams. Yet, amidst all the success, Caitlin stayed grounded. She often reflected on her roots, remembering the small-town park where she first fell in love with basketball. Those memories kept her humble, reminding her that her journey was far from over. There were still goals to achieve, records to break, and lives to touch. And Caitlin approached each day with the same relentless drive that had brought her this far. By the end of the season, Caitlin's team had clinched a spot in the playoffs, thanks in large part to her leadership and performance. Fans packed arenas to watch her play, chanting her name and holding up signs that read, "Caitlin inspires me." Analysts debated whether she might be the greatest player of her generation, but Caitlin brushed off such talk. To her, titles and trophies paled in comparison to the connections she forged with fans and the lives she touched along the way. When the season finally concluded, Caitlin took a step back to reflect on everything she had accomplished. She realized that her encounter with Elle Duncan had been a turning point, not just for her career but for her understanding of what it meant to be a role model. It taught her that true strength lay not in silencing critics, but in rising above negativity and using her voice to inspire others. Every challenge she faced, every question she answered had contributed to the person she was becoming: a leader, a trailblazer, and a beacon of hope. Looking ahead, Caitlin knew there would always be new battles to fight, both on and off the court. But she welcomed those challenges, knowing they would push her to grow and evolve. Her journey was far from finished, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Whether it was breaking records, mentoring young athletes, or continuing to advocate for equality in sports, Caitlin vowed to stay true to herself and her values. And so, as another chapter closed in her remarkable story, Caitlin Clark stood tall, not just as a basketball player, but as a symbol of resilience, determination, and unwavering belief in the power of dreams. Her legacy wasn't defined by stats or accolades. It was etched in the hearts of those she inspired. Young fans looked up to her not because she was perfect, but because she showed them that imperfection was part of the journey. Through her actions and words, Caitlin proved that greatness wasn't reserved for the few. It was within reach for anyone willing to work for it. As she stepped onto the court for her next game, Caitlin carried with her the lessons of the past and the promise of the future. With every dribble, pass, and shot, she reminded the world why she was more than just an athlete. She was a force of nature, destined to leave an enduring mark on the sport and the lives of countless individuals fortunate enough to witness her brilliance.